lab,
Okay.
like early on.
Oh, maybe. Okay. We can fight over this one, but
No,
sorry, go ahead.
let's
No,
fight.
no, keep talking. It's good.
We can fight over this. But like they,
What's going on, you guys? Today we have Destiny questioning Lex Fridman. Lex Fridman is a part of this propaganda machine that includes Joe Rogan and all the such. Destiny wants to get to the bottom of it, of what are your actual intentions. Let's get into it.
Conversations to be had about a lot of stuff related to how we handled the coronavirus. You know, were lockdowns effective? Was there enough data to support the huge measures we took? You know, why didn't we have the option to show I was infected a month ago? Why do I need to be vaccinated? Why wasn't that option ever a thing in the United States? I don't think it was. There are really good questions to be asked there, but all the people asking the questions are also trying to tell you that ivermectin and monoclonal antibodies are the way to go for everything, and the vaccine is evil, and they're just going to turn you gay like the frogs.
Yeah,
and it's like Jesus, like you can't. There's like no place to reasonably criticize from, because all of the people that are criticizing aren't doing it with an open mind, or you know, they're not reading studies or doing anything. They're saying like, I do my own research, which means they listen to whatever the last guy on Joe Rogan said, and now they're parroting that opinion 100%.
easy now.
Yeah.
Easy now, bro.
The last guy on Joe Rogan, not Joe Rogan. Okay, that Robert Malone guy on Joe Rogan got me real fired
That's
up.
one guest.
People see him as like the father of mRNA technology. He published one paper. Okay.
What do you mean, people? Which people think that?
Joe Rogan fans. I get like I run into these people. I start arguing with people, and they start citing me. But what about?
I'm a Joe Rogan fan, and I appreciate the vaccine.
That's good. I'm glad you do. But there's definitely
But you said there's a type. There's a type. What's the type? What's the type of Joe Rogan fan?
Anti-establishment.
I think that's not Joe Rogan. That's a general public discourse. There's a default anti-establishment on the right and the left. That's the default easy thing to go to.
I think Joe Rogan fans are definitely a certain type of anti-establishment, though. Like I could guess the Joe Rogan fan. Like if I were to do general population versus Joe Rogan fan, who do you think is more likely to be anti-vaccine?
Do you have data on this? Or are you just guessing?
Yeah, just guessing.
Yeah, I think you are actually judging.
I am.
I think you're judging, because I think you're also. The beautiful thing about podcasting, this could be similar to streaming, is there's a large number of people that just listen. Like, what does it mean to be a Joe Rogan fan?
I don't think you just listen. I think people listen and absorb the information.
I would say that the Joe Rogan fan base is as divided in the vaccine as the general public.
Gotcha. Man, I'm going to look for polling data on that. I'm sure somebody's got to have done it out there, but...
No, but...
So here we have Lex Fridman acting dumb, acting like he hasn't seen the memes, like he hasn't been online and seen the DMT memes about Joe Rogan, or hasn't seen all these things. You know, what comes into your head whenever someone says a Joe Rogan fan, a Joe Rogan fan, and don't play stupid. Like, you know, the memes that are out there, dude. Like, it's not out here. It's not a trivial matter. And we're not talking about the ones that listen to it as like regular people. We're not talking about it as like level-headed. We're talking about what the state of America is today. We have people that have celebrity-induced, like they want to live like a celebrity. They want to buy, what's the alpha wave brain, whatever that crap is that helps you, like it just gives you headaches. That's all that crap does. But it's just like this idealization of these celebrities because he has a podcast that is fed to you. I believe that Lex Fridman is just pleading the fifth in a very, very dodgy way.
You're basically revealing the fact they have no data. You're using your own judgment.
For sure. Based on how he's had conversations about how his experience with the coronavirus, and then based on the guests that have come on that have talked and echoed a lot of like anti-vax talking points and been completely unchallenged, and then based on statements he's made about like myocarditis and the vaccine and everything as well. Yeah.
So it's the level of challenge or not that he's doing.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and then what his true positions are, and then the types of guests he typically chooses to bring on to talk about the vaccines. Yeah.
Okay, but that represents somehow a deep anti-establishment feeling versus just the vaccine. I mean, I've seen the vaccine and other things being a thing that broke people.
The coronavirus, that whole 1 or 2 years broke a lot of people.
There's a lot of emotion, and the emotion quickly solidified into an opinion that almost had nothing to do with like thinking through and updating your knowledge and so on. You just made up your mind.
Yeah, but I think a lot of it comes from that anti-establishment place. Like what the vaccine represents the ultimate of establishment. It was a huge private company backed by a huge public government, and there's Fauci, and there's Biden, and there's Pfizer, and there's all these countries locking us up in our homes, telling us to do a thing. Like the vaccine was like the ultimate like submission tool to like show you that the government owns you. Not only do you have to get injected once, it's a series, and then you got to get boosters, and it's like they're trying to keep you under their thumb, and that's the control. I feel like that vaccine became like the ultimate rallying cry between like, do you support? Are you a sellout that is going to believe whatever the government tells the sheep to take, or are you going to be like the guy that stands against the crowd and gets fired from his job and pulls his kids from school because they're not going to let the evil Fauci medicine, jab them in the arm?
And the funny thing is, the crowd that stands against the institution is not larger than the crowd of sheep. There's like one sheep standing there.
Sure, yeah, or it feels that way sometimes.
One vaccinated sheep. Well, okay. What's the defense of institutions? How do you regain the trust of institutions? Like, first of all, do you think that there's ways in which WHO, CDC failed? And do you think there's criticism towards
And this is where Lex Fridman is going to continue to worm his way out of it. And Destiny sort of lets him. I don't know whether he was getting paid off as well to let this happen, but Lex Fridman just goes and again plays. He just keeps on playing dumb, and Destiny says, okay, well, no, his fans, the ones that I'm really wanting to talk about, are the ones that are anti-establishment. And it's at this point, what does establishment mean? That doesn't matter on who, like the anti-establishment, that becomes a little shaky even with that argument because, well, who is the establishment? Are we going to say that Joe Rogan is the establishment? Because it could possibly be that, we have Trump as the establishment, Joe Rogan is the establishment. We have all of these people as the establishment. And then you could also say, okay, well, Hillary Clinton's the establishment. Ellen DeGeneres is the establishment. That's whenever it starts to get shaky. We don't know who the hell we're actually talking about. We just know that we're not that. We know that we're still poor, freaking jerking off watching TikTok vids.
Pfizer and the big pharma companies that's deserved.
Damn, the pharma companies, I'm not sure. For CDC and WHO, so here's a criticism that I have of all of academia, and I feel it's stronger and stronger every day. I don't think it's enough to be a researcher or to be correct about issues. Academia needs to increase its ability to communicate. It is just an unbelievable, unmitigated failure that academics are unwilling to wade into the complicated topics that exist today because other people are,
First you call me spineless, and then you call me a bad communicator.
But no, look, you're here, you're doing it. So you get props from me, okay? Good job.
That motherfucker.
But there are like so many, but I'm sure that you must have heard another fellow academic, a fellow colleague express some amount of frustration about like in their specific discipline, they know something to be true and they know that like a lot of the messaging is like wrong or bad in the public about it, but they're never going to step out and say anything because either one, they're very measured and careful with their take, which they feel is incompatible with what people want to hear, or two, they're really worried that they might be incorrect. So they're going to be cautious while everybody else is going out and like hardcore.
And they also don't have the support of institutions for them to go out on a limb.
Yeah, that too.
So like to take risks. For example, I've heard that with lab leak theory. I've had a lot of virologist friends that are like, yeah, it's obviously leaked from a lab.
Okay.
Like early on.
Oh, maybe. Okay. We can fight over this one, but
No,
sorry, go ahead.
No,
keep talking.
We can fight over this. But like I should sort of backstep and say like, that's like you talk about shooting the shit. You haven't really investigated, but it's your gut.
Mm-hmm.
Like this doesn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
They would never say that publicly.
Of course.
Mostly because you're saying like, what they would all say is like, we want to see data.
Yeah, which would be good, which is fine.
So they're going with like this is too many coincidences in the same place. That's the logic. But they don't want to say anything because there's no data. You need to have evidence. You need to have actual evidence to say one way or the other. There's that. But there's also, just like you said, I mean, effective communication. You're a fan of Sean Carroll.
Yes. He's like one of the only
Make sure you guys like and subscribe for more content like this.
people in this whole planet that I like besides you. I love Sean Carroll.
Anytime Sean Carroll is brought up as evidenced, there's a smile that comes over your face.
I love it.
Of like joy.
Yeah.
Of like a little kid thinking about Santa Claus. Okay, I love Sean Carroll too. People should
just to be
listen to this
clear,
podcast.
I love Sean Carroll because I hate this divide between like you're either STEM or you're like philosophy, arts, and all that other stuff, and the two worlds can never cross. And I love that he was so good at physics, but like explores and pays attention to all of the like sociological stuff too. It's so rare to find that quality in a person.
He's legit one of the really, really, really special minds. But you don't have to be a Sean Carroll. You can be just a little better at educating. Another person in the medical and the health space is somebody named Andrew Huberman, a friend of mine from Stanford. He's an incredible educator. Mm-hmm. There's the kind of process in science they usually call like review or survey papers, where you basically summarize all that's going on, integrate it, and like draw wisdom from it, and also project like where's the discipline headed. And Andrew does that basically on all these subcomponents of the different stuff going on in neuroscience and biology, neurobiology, all that. He's able to. He does a podcast called Huberman Lab where he just summarizes all and is able to explain like what does that actually mean for your life in terms of protocols of how to make your life better. I feel like people should be able to do that more and more. But with virology and oh boy, that's a tricky one. That's a really tricky one.
I wish that people could have honest conversations. Like, I attack a lot of people that do the lab leak theory stuff, but truly, we should be able to have that conversation publicly. It always feels like the people that are having the conversation don't ever really want to have the conversation. They're not being honest. Like, I'm a guy that like does his own research, and it's so boring reading studies, and a lot of it I can only do abstracts, and it's so much work. But I'll never ever say that about myself. I'm a guy that does his own research, because every time I hear somebody say that, they don't do any research. When they say they do their own research, what they mean is they've seen one podcast and their opinion on it is
What
completely.
podcast is that?
Definitely not mine, because if it was mine, I wouldn't be criticizing anything they say.
All right.
But yeah, so like lab leak is another one where it's like, well, how do you know it's lab leak? How do I know it's lab leak? Because
Yeah, I mean, there's a big discussion between the two different movements. C.P. Snow has a book called The Two Cultures. It talks about the science and humanities and the divide between them.
Fauci lied and Hunter Biden
Right.
laptop. And it's like,
Right.
okay, come on, you haven't engaged with it at all. There's really interesting research that shows, there's a really strong study that shows that there's like a high degree of certainty that it came from the wet markets. Very, very high degree of certainty. And there was an article that came out recently where it's like, Senate concludes that virus actually came from the Wuhan virology lab or whatever. And that whole article, if you actually read it, it never says that in the article. I don't know why they tweeted it with that headline. But yeah, it's to back up. I'm sorry. I think we should have good.
You should be sorry.
Yeah. I'm not sorry, actually. I get to ramble here, okay? I'm here for a long time. I rescind
Very
my
nice.
apology, okay? I actually rescind my apology. We should be able to have challenging conversations about things, but you gotta, man, be well-read on both sides. Not this like, I do my own research, so I don't believe anything that Fauci says. Like, come on, dude. Like, you can do better than that. Not you personally, but
Gotcha. How does that feel?
feels great.
So for people who don't know,
Feel
that's
understood.
That's the catchphrase. Gotcha. Through all tragedy and triumph, through all the roller coaster of life, your response to it is gotcha.
So here we have Lex Fridman, again, just worming his way out of it, not wanting to step on any toes, not wanting to cause any controversy, not daring to call out Joe Rogan, who is a part of this propaganda machine, who is, still wanting to sell you on the idea that the empire is not completely dead, that Joe Rogan is the voice of truth, that he is the one who is going to call it out, to say everything, and it's going to be all right, man. It's going to be okay. We can just listen to these comedy stand-ups and hear him talk about aliens, and we'll just continue to believe that it's all okay, and let me know what you guys think in the comments. It's another day in the progressive way.